Hi, everyone. I'm just giving it another minute or two since I see people joining from our waiting room, but we're already getting a good number here. Okay, looks like everyone is here for now. Hello, welcome. My name is Max Goldberg. I'm the chair of the description section, and it's my pleasure to be able to welcome you to this workshop today where we'll be diving into records and context and the Wikibase instance that Regine Heberlein has developed to work with the standard. This is the description section's first event of the SAA year, and I'm really delighted that today brings to fruition an idea that Regina brought to us last year as something that she thought made sense under the umbrella of the description section. And we definitely want to be responsive to our community in that way. So I'm excited that this event has that sort of community genesis. I think we're really fortunate to have someone steering today who's been so invested, in both the theoretical basis, but also the practical application of RiC as a standard. And I'm sure we're all going to learn a lot today from Regina. I will let her introduce herself, but just to give you an idea of the basic flow of today's session, we'll be spending around half an hour all together as a group. Regina will present to us. There'll be an opportunity for question and answer at that point. And then we will break out into smaller groups to experiment, get our hands dirty with the Wikibase instance, and then we'll all come back together to have more conversation and questions before we wrap up. I think that's all that I have. So Regina, if you would like, please take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Max. And thank you to you and to Bets for organizing this session. My name is Regine Heberlein. I work at Princeton University. I am the Archival Systems Technical Lead. I've been involved with SAA standards for a number of years. I've served on TS-EAS, on TS-DAX. I am currently a member of the standards committee itself. I also serve on Archive Space Council and on the BibFrame ARM task force. And I have done a stint of about 2 years, I think, on EGAD, the body that created RiC. And I'm really excited to be here today. I'm going to start by saying, if you haven't yet made sure that your account is all set up, this would be a great moment to do that. You should have gotten 2 emails back from the Wikibase as part of the account creation and confirmation process. You can log in now and go to the preferences. That's a link in the upper right. And scroll all the way down and you'll find a button that says something like confirm email address. If that button is there, click it. And then click on the confirmation link in the email that it'll send you. If the button isn't there, that means you're all set. All right. With that, I am going to share my screen and dive in. 1 second. All right, this and get that out of the way and start the slideshow. All right. So, as I'm sure most of you know, records in context replaced ISAT-G and the suite of related standards at the end of 2023 when the harmonized version came out, version 1.0. And at the time it came out in 3 parts, 4 parts were intended. The application guidelines at the time were still in development, are still pending, but hot off the press, I hear that they are being launched next week at the ICA Congress. So that'll help a lot, I think. But in the interim, we haven't had the benefit of the application guidelines. And of course, there's also no open source content management system, database application that supports RiC yet. And that has made testing very difficult. And so my intention in building this Wikibase implementation is to fill that gap and to give us all a sandbox environment where we can, as Max said, get our hands dirty and break some stuff and create some data and see how it all fits together and how it works. I'm going to also add a disclaimer. This is the first time that I am opening this Wikibase to all of you. So look kindly upon any kinks that we may encounter. We're almost ensured to find some bugs. And so please just let me know anything that you see that is amiss so that I can fix it and we can make it better together for all of us going forward. All right, I'm not going to delve very deeply into records and contexts, but I'm going to just frame the conversation a little bit so that we're all situated in the Wikibase. So again, records in context is the newish international standard for archival description. It was developed by a group called EGAD, the Experts Group of Archival Description, on Archival Description, which is a group within the International Council on Archives. And it consists of 4 parts, of which 3 are published and 1 is about to be published. The Foundations of Archival Description, which is like 9 or 10 pages of just what is archival description, so an introductory kind of text. Then the so-called conceptual model and the ontology. And you have links on the slides. Max, if you haven't yet, could you put the link to the slides in the chat? And so this Wikibase implements the conceptual model. And the reason I decided to go with the conceptual model and not the ontology is because RiC-O, the ontology, adds quite the level of complexity. And so I thought it would make for a gentler learning curve to start at the beginning, so to speak. And in the process, hopefully, that also helps us to understand some of the decisions that were made in the ontology. So the conceptual model is a human readable document. It is a PDF, in fact, that models the archival domain. So it defines the kinds of things that we describe in the archives domain and what characteristics they have and how they work together, how they relate to one another. And it is just technical enough that it can be translated, so to speak, into specs for an implementation of many kinds. You can implement this as a database. You can implement this as an XML schema. You can implement it in basically any kind of environment. It is implementation agnostic. If you work in the US, then you're probably most familiar with EAD and DAX as where we're coming from, with RiC being where we are now going to. And so I wanted to say just a couple of words of the relationship between EAD and DAX and RiC. Both EAD and DAX are implementations of ISAD-G. And actually, EAD precedes DAX, DAX being the content standard in the US. And RiC-CM took a step back from that and now explicitly models the archival domain. And in the process of doing that, it basically broke some things. It starts over. So it's not fully aligned with what our descriptive records are in now with EAD or with ISAD-G and DAX being an implementation of ISAD-G. And I also want to point out that TSEAS and the subgroup TSEAD is working towards an alignment in EAD4 already. And so that incremental work of getting from A to B, so to speak, has already begun. So this is what RiC-CM looks like under the hood, so to speak, how it's set up. These are the classes of the conceptual model. And the RiC-CM actually doesn't say class. They use jargon from an entity relationship database model. So they call these entities. And I'm calling them classes because that's what you would call them in an ontology environment. And I'm going to show you that, or I hope to show you anyway, that the RiC-CM is actually set up to support that. So the classes of the conceptual model are at the root of this universe, so to speak, sits thing. And that is very common in ontologies. You have thing, you have race in LRM, which also just means thing, but in Latin. And it just means that everything else that is defined in this universe is a kind of thing. And so then the main classes in this universe are a record resource, an instantiation, an agent, an event, a rule, a date, and a place. And these are mostly intuitive, with the possible exception of the instantiation. So here is where RiC departs a little bit from what we're used to doing, because the record resource only captures the intellectual qualities of a record, and the instantiation captures the physical qualities of that record. And so to describe a record or an archival unit, let's say, you really need both of these record types. And then there are subtypes of a record resource. There's a record set, there's a record part. Then there are subtypes of agent. So there's person, there's group, there's position, there's mechanism just being software. And within group, we have family and corporate body. And then we have activity as a more granular kind of event, and mandate as a more granular kind of rule. And so that's sort of familiar, I think. Now, the thing with classes is that subclasses inherit properties from their superclasses. And that is exactly how these entities are defined. Subclasses may also have more specific properties than their superclasses. So what that means is, for example, thing has the attributes name, identifier, and general description. Record resource has all those attributes as well as its own. So for example, one of those would be conditions of access. There are others. And then record, which is a subtype of record resource, has the combined attributes of thing and record resource, as well as its own. In this case, that's a single one. It's just documentary form type. So you see that color-coded here. The orange fields are inherited from thing. The blue fields are inherited from record resource, and documentary form type in white at the bottom is specific to the RiC-CM record. And I've given you a link on this slide to go to the descriptions of the attributes directly in the CM. All right, now this class structure also applies to the relations that are defined in the RiC-CM. And here is where it gets a little more complex. We saw 19 entities defined. That's very finite. There are, however, 142 relations defined in the RiC-CM. So that's where you can get very, very granular with the description. But the class structure applies. And what you have on this slide here is just the top level relations, so not their subclasses. And I've color-coded them by the subject that they would hang off of, subject in a grammatical sense for a statement consisting of a subject, verb, and object. So has or had part would be the verb to form a statement that starts with a thing. Has or had subject would be the verb in a statement that starts with a record resource. So a record resource has a subject of any kind of thing. So I hope that makes sense. Anything else I wanted to say about that? Right, so there's 14 top-level relations on this slide. The total number of total relations, if you count the inverse selection relations, is actually 25. The inverse being the opposite, so has or had part, and is or was part of would be the inverse. So total of that would be 25 actually. And then the 117 is it, remaining ones would be subclasses to various levels of these. All right. So I already mentioned this, the RiC-CM is implementation agnostic, but I hope that by now it is shining through how it is positioned for forming triples. So for being implemented in a formal ontology. And I want to take a quick look at RiC-O at this point without going into great depth, but because RiC-O is such an implementation in a formal ontology. And what the larger point I want to make here is that any implementation is going to have to make some decisions, and I'm going to point out a few. So RiC-O, the RiC ontology, is the formal representation of the RiC-CM in OWL. And OWL, if you're wondering or not familiar, is an extension of RDF for authoring ontologies. But the important thing to know about RiC-O is that it's also an extension of the CM, and a quite extensive one. It defines classes and properties that are not found in the CM. So there's about 60 conceptual classes, and I kind of did a quick and dirty counting here. I might be off by one or two, but in that order of magnitude, plus 56 relation classes. Then over 550 object properties. So these are the ones that connect a class to an instance of a class to an instance of another class, plus a few SCOs properties that are brought in as extensions, and then 78-ish data properties. So those connect an instance of a class to a data type, like a string. And those 78, I want to say, some of those are transitional. Their whole reason for being is to make it easier to go from EAD to RiC-O, because a lot of our data is not entified. So we don't have an instance of a class. We don't have that identity record for everything. So in the spirit of incremental adoption, RiC-O provides these transitional data properties that allow us to map our data to RiC-O, even though it is stringy and not entified. And the idea here is that we'll get around to entifying that at some point. And that is baked into the EAD to RiC-O converter, by the way, if you want to take a look at that. And I've provided the link on this slide. RiC-O is on a much faster development path than RiC-CM. RiC-CM has not changed since version 1.0 was released in 2023, whereas there have been 3 updates to RiC-O since then. And then, of course, RiC-O is an OWL implementation. It needs itself to be implemented in some kind of an application content management system. This is a snippet of RiC-O record. And I think what I'm going to do is get out of my sharing mode here so that I can highlight some stuff. I hope you can still see that well enough. So we have here the beginnings of a record resource record. And it has an identifier, and it tells us what it describes, the George Wiley papers. It is or was described by something with this identifier that is not included here, but we can presumably find it with this identifier and learn more about what this entity is. It has a type of record set, and then it has a record set type of collection. It has a title, and then it has an RDFS label, which is the same as the title. And then it has 3 elements here for date. It has a beginning date and an end date, and then a date. And the beginning and end date, as you see, have data types. So these are constrained to be years, whereas the date here is just a string in English, even though it's all numbers. So that's an implementation decision. And then we have here has or had holder, the University of Strathclyde. And again, we would find more about who they are at that identifier, but that's not included in this record. And then this collection has some members in English and some members in Gaelic. It has a creator, despite this somewhat unintuitive name of the element. This is the creator, and that is an agent called George Wiley, born in 1921. Again, we would have to go find this record to learn more about the creator here. And then finally, we have an instantiation. So again, the instantiation is about the physical properties of this record. And the thing that I want to point out here is that while holder and organic provenance and some other things pointed at records living somewhere else, the instantiation record here is nested within the record resource record. So that's an implementation decision. And the instantiation is about the George Wiley papers. It instantiates the George Wiley papers. It has or had holder of University of Strathclyde. So you see some duplication here because we have the same tag with the same value up here. So that's an implementation decision. And then it has an extent of 10 meters. All right. So I'm going to hop over to the Wikibase at this point, but you have more links on the slides. So anything that I refer to here while I go through, you will find the link to that on your slides. So this Wikibase is pre-populated with the entities, the attributes, and the relations that are defined in the CM. And from now on, I'm just going to call them the classes and the properties, because the Wikibase is a linked data environment. It is also pre-populated with some controlled vocabularies. And I hope that I did a good job at making this implementation entirely self-describing. So you should be able to look up a record for an entity, for example, and understand what its subject should be, what its object should be, what it describes, and so on. So first of all, about the controlled vocabularies and the implementation decisions, you find that in the implementation notes here. Here is the list of vocabularies that I have provided in this Wikibase. You can look at all the properties here. And if you look at a record itself, hopefully it is self-describing, so it should tell you what its inverse property is, what it's a sub-property of, and then what the property constraints are. So this one takes as its subject an activity and as its object a record resource, for example. The reason, just taking a little step back, the reason I settled on a Wikibase is pretty much convenience. Wikimedia, as many of you may know, provides this wonderful service called wikibase.cloud, where you can just basically click a button and have available to you for no cost an instance of a Wikibase that then you can fill with whatever data you like. And it's hosted by them. You don't need to be a system administrator. You don't need to like fight with an installation and then a server and all that. They provide all of that to you at no cost. And the little bit of drawback is limitations to the configuration options in here, but I think it's a small price to pay. And what we get for that is a GUI. It may not be the ideal GUI, but it beats looking at RDF, I think. There are configurable data entry forms to create items. That's under Cradle on the left here. And I've made some for you, not for absolutely every record type, but for some of them. And so you can just click on this and expand that if it wants to expand. Yo, that worked like half an hour ago. There we go. And so this can look a little overwhelming because basically this is absolutely every field that is available to you on the record type, but you just fill out the ones that you need. There are two requirements. One is you need a label, and the other is you need to say what field type you're creating here. And that's already preset for you here. So you really just have to give it a label. So don't be intimidated by the overwhelming number of choices there. What else do we have in here? We have a query service. So you can query this Wikibase with Sparkle. We're not getting into that today, but feel free to come back at any point and use that. Same with the quick statements that allows you to bulk load data in here. There's of course also the Open Refine reconciliation service that you could set up and use. And then nice for me as the not system administrator, but quasi administrator of this Wikibase is that there are APIs where I can go in on the back end and do some administrative stuff. And then a general note about why I like Wikibase. The thing that it does really well is reification, which means that anytime you create a statement, so for example, here where I say documented by has an inverse property called documents, that's a statement. As soon as you create it, it gets an identifier in the backend and it becomes an item itself. And that's what allows us to then qualify statements and give those statements new verbs to say, oh, this only applies to this and that date range and so on. And that's a little harder to do in just straight up RDF or OWL, but they sure make it look easy in here and it's super useful, of course. All right. Another thing I want to show you is on the main page, there's this discussion tab. And the point of me spending months of my free time in setting up this Wikibase is because I wanted us as a community of practice to have a place to just try this out, right? To get comfortable and familiar with the data model, to understand how this might change our workflows going forward, for example, in terms of doing identity management. And thinking about what we might need of a more polished application than this Wikibase. So that we can then jump into all kinds of conversations. We can give feedback to EGAD. We can have a conversation within SAA about the path of alignment and adoption. We can have a conversation within the archive space community or the A2M community about supporting RiC. We can have conversations with international users about best practices and about how other people do certain things. And I have included on one of the slides a link if you want to join that Google group. But what's really important too is that before you leave today, you share your experience in here on this discussion tab. And I've basically given a little bit of a guideline up here. If you haven't done this, if you're not a Wikidata editor, This tells you a little bit about how you sign and how you indent and so on. And then I've set up a couple of categories, questions about the RiC-CM, questions about this implementation. Is there something wrong with the Cradle forms? Is there something wrong with the Sparkle queries and other? And all you need to do is hit edit here and scroll down and leave your thoughts and then save the record. And I hope that all of you leave at least one thought here before you leave today, for the benefit of us all in this room today, but also for anyone who comes back to this later or wanders onto this site and kind of wants to figure out what we are thinking about. All right. So we're going to break out into smaller sessions soon, but I'm going to give a little show and tell first before I plunge you into the deep end. So I would suggest that you take 5 minutes to just read through this. A lot of it I've already said, but just to get oriented, I would suggest that you have the RiC-CM open. You have the link on a slide. To get to the relevant sections, I've given you some search strings that you can use in here to just Control F your way around this document, because it is, again, a PDF. If you brought a record to map, you may find these mappings helpful. This is from DAX to RiC. It's based on an ISAT-G to RiC mapping prepared by Silke Jagodzinski, who is on TSEAS. There's also mappings from EAD to RiC-O and EAC to RiC-O. Again, you have the link here. Just be aware that RiC-O is a lot more granular than the CM, so you may not find all the properties that you find in here in the Wikibase. If you didn't bring a record, what I can suggest is that you build out one that I have started, the George McGovern papers. By the way, if you start typing up here in the search box and it says no match was found, just ignore that and search for pages containing, and it'll come right up. That's one of those things that are not configurable as far as I've found out in a cloud instance. But here we go. We have the George McGovern papers here, and I've started adding records to it. So we have here, for example, includes or included series 1 and series 2, but there's many more series and there's also sub-series. So you can just hop over to the finding aid. This is the Princeton University finding aid, and start porting some of that data over into the Wikibase. You can go to the existing records and just add more statements. As a convenience, I have also provided you with this table of all the properties that are in the Wikibase. This is all of them, and here is it's broken out by relations and attributes, if that is helpful to you. So before we break out, I'm just gonna demonstrate how to do this. So say we want to create a new item. You would go on the left here and say new item. And I'm gonna create series 3 here. Just gonna do it the quick and dirty way. So we're gonna give it a label. The language is already set to English, so we're okay. I'm gonna say this is a component record of the George McGovern papers, just as a description. And then we create that. And what's really important at this point is that you make your first statements the record type of this thing. So I'm going to click on add statement, and I'm going to say this is an instance of, and it comes right up, a record set. So instance of should always be your first statement. And then you can go from there and add more statements. What else can I show you? We've talked about that. You can look up all the items in the Wikibase. It's a little more involved, but you can do it if you go to special pages over here. And then you go to all pages. And then you say display pages starting at Q1, which is the first item, numerically speaking. And then here you select your record type. We want to see all the items. And then you get all the item records that are already in this Wikibase. And as you can see, most of them are controlled vocabulary terms. Descriptive data, there's very little in here at this point, but you all are going to change that. I think that's all I have. We're going to open it up for some questions now, and I'm also going to start creating our breakout rooms. And I want to say a huge thank you to Anna Björnsen, to Rachel Searcy, to Maggie Hughes, to Kelly. Oh, Kelly, forgive me, I forget your last name. If you're here, shout it out.
Bogan, it's okay, Regina.
Bogan, thank you, Kelly. And Maristella Fustel, who have volunteered to be in each breakout session and share their screens in case anyone can't log in, has issues, is not comfortable in a Wikibase, and so on. I think that's it. If you want to go grab a coffee or something, this would also be a good moment, but I think now we're going to open it up for questions.
Yes, thank you, Regina. And if any people can feel free to raise your hands in Zoom to ask a question, or feel free to use the chat and I can monitor that.
I actually have a question. My name is Yogita. I don't know if you can see, oh, you can see me, sorry. I've been following your George. By the way, first of all, thank you so much for taking this much time out of your professional life to create this resource space and provide this excellent class. I'm extremely a newbie, so my question is a newbie, but I wanted to start by saying thank you, thank you, thank you. So I found it really helpful when you sent all the links with emails to look at the George McGovern papers. And just now you created a series 3. And I've been trying to refresh it and see. So my question is, it's not showing up as series 1, 2 is showing up, and the series 3 is not showing up. It's a very newbie question. Why is it not showing up?
It might take a moment. You know, if it's available to me to see, it should be available to you. There might be a small lag, but I would expect that it'll pop up momentarily.
Thank you.
Patrick, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this excellent presentation. Really appreciate it when someone does the implementations like this that we can borrow and use in order to make things so effective. My curiosity is going to go to the implementation of this on a larger scale. I know you mentioned that you have not been able to contact either like an archive space or an Atom as of yet, but have we made any inroads in which like something in a similar vein has done in the past, like SciDoc or Dagdo or something along those lines? And if we have so, what's the current status of trying to crosswalk everything together?
I see. Yeah, thank you for that question. So I should clarify that I have not reached out to any organization or entity to say, hey, look at this Wikibase and learn from it, or, you know, I'm doing this purely for the community of practice, meaning the archives practitioners. I have for a while, and those of you who know me, I know there are many familiar faces here today. Hi, everyone. Those of you who know me know that I've been somewhat concerned, to put it mildly, for a while about practitioners not being fully engaged in this conversation. And so there is, I think, a chicken and egg problem here that I'm trying to solve, right? This may not be the full problem, but maybe it helps a little bit to just have this GUI, this application layer that helps us test a little bit, because before having that, it was just really hard to test and say, oh, okay, so this is how you make this statement. Now, I will also say that we have some folks from the archive space community here today. So that is wonderful. And I hope that we can just start some conversations today, or join some conversations, I should say.
Great, Regina, there's a question in the chat from Kate Bowers asking if it's possible to see a demo of starting an entirely new archival resource rather than tacking on to the McGovern.
You would do the exact same thing. You would just go to create an item, and you would just start with the title of the collection. And then you would give it the same instance of record set, because record sets can nest in record sets. And that's really it.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
First, I really enjoyed the presentation. I learned a lot, and I am quite late to the party here. I'm uncertain about is RiC-O, how does that relate to EAD? It looked quite similar. Is it supposed to just be an alternative to EAD? Is it supposed to replace EAD? Why would I want to use RiC-O versus EAD? I'm just having all these questions run through my head right now.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think you're not the only one asking it. So RiC-O is the formal representation of the RiC-CM. And the similarity that you're seeing visually is that it is expressed in RDF XML on my slide. That's not the only way of expressing it. But that, I think, is where that visual similarity comes from. I should also say, to the best of my understanding, and I'm not the expert, but my understanding is that nobody expects you to use RiC-O like natively. It is going to be more of a serialization on the back end. But because we don't have an application yet that does that, right now we're kind of left with the pure RDF. As to will it replace EAD? I don't know. We'll see. My sense is more that the two will coexist, and that it will be possible to map more comfortably from EAD to RiC-O in the future, and that RiC-O will take on more of the role of the sharing and transmission standard. But this is really me speculating at this point. So, take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And like I said at the outset, we can certainly have time for more questions and conversation when we all come back together after breaking out.
All right. I think I'm going to open the rooms now. I'll be hopping from room to room. And there's also in the breakout rooms a feature where you can call for help if you get stuck and you want somebody to pop in on you. So please feel free to use that. And again, I'll be hopping from room to room and checking in, and hopefully I can answer questions that come up. And then we'll probably do that for about like half an hour. And then we'll come back to the main session and kind of discuss and share what that experience was like.
And just to add, all those folks that Regina mentioned being sort of volunteering to help lead and share their screens, I made you all co-hosts, so you should be fine sharing your screen, but certainly let me know if there's any trouble with that.
All right. The rooms have been opened. You should see a little pop-up, and you'll just have to accept that invite. All right, the folks hanging back in the main session. Are you not assigned to a room? Let me see.
I'm just making sure we're all good before I go off to my room.
Got it. Okay.
I think
Thank you.
You can
Yeah,
go.
it wasn't necessarily addressed to you, Bets.
I figured. I just
though.
thought
Thank
I'd
you.
explain.
I'm also gonna check that Chris is assigned. Let me see. Not in this room.
Yes, he's assigned to 5.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And George is assigned to 4. So everybody is assigned.
Yep.
Okay. Wonderful.
Ah, got it.
All right. Well, in that case, if you want to go to your rooms and participate.
I think I will hang here and maybe bounce between the rooms a little bit just to see if there's any technical
Awesome.
issues or anything.
Thank
But
you.
I just wanted to say great job, Regina.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Time-wise,
really
it
fun.
worked out pretty
Time-wise is great,
precisely.
and the questions felt very, authentic to me. And I definitely, I think let's make sure to come back by a quarter after to give
Yeah,
people a chance to share and ask questions.
absolutely.
Yep.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Great.
Have fun.
Okay. How's it going, Regina? Nope, you're muted.
I am muted. Here we go. It's going well. I'm
Good.
super excited to see folks creating records and, you know, thinking about, oh, what is the scope content and what is the description? And
Good.
yeah,
That's
very
great.
nice.
Yeah. No, you're just the presentation at the outset really helped me to, see this as sort of a big step in terms of, presenting it to a wider community. And
That was my hope, and
Yep.
I hope that it'll just ease the learning curve.
Yeah.
Because thinking in the abstract is just no stand-in for actually trying to create records in a sort of lifelike environment, right?
Yep.
So yeah, we'll see
sure.
where it goes.
For sure. I've been waiting I think I'm going to put in a note now to say that there's probably about 10 minutes left.
Yep. And I guess we've lost Chris.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Hopefully he's just getting a coffee or something.
Yeah. That's right. And I think about a third of the people who signed up didn't actually come. Is that about right?
Yeah. I think that's about right. And there were,
okay.
there was, I marked it down like at the high point. We were at 44. So I think a dozen people or so dropped off, but that's kind of what we expected.
Exactly. Yeah. And hopefully they'll just come back to it on their own. They all have the accounts.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Were people running into anything that you were surprised by or that you
no, well, maybe a little bit. There was actually in 2 of the sessions there was a discussion about what is the description field therefore when there's also an abstract and a scope content. And because it's one of the fields that are built into the Wikibase, I in fact also thought when I decided what to implement how, I thought, well, if we have the description field, then that can be the abstract, right? You can use it like that, but you can also use it just within the Wikibase as a disambiguation field. So there we go. We hit our first decision.
Yeah, right. What is this? What does this mean? What's it for? Yeah. Wow.
I'll be really curious to hear what folks bring back from their breakout sessions.
When did you start developing the Wikibase? How long have you been working on it?
I mean, so I've been doing this on my own time, right? Even though I did finagle it into a research sprint that we did in my group. And I was like, oh, can I use that time to work on my Wikibase? So I did get a block of like 2 weeks to work on it on my work time. But I don't even remember when I first started. There's probably a timestamp in there somewhere that tells us, but months, I mean, many months, probably a year.
It's just catch as catch can when you have time to do it. Yeah.
It was a learning curve, right? Like initially I did everything with quick statements. And then I was like, oh, this is quick statements 1, and this is quick statements 2. Quick statements 2 is nicer, but you can't actually create properties with it. And so then, creating all the properties, then stuff happened and I had to undo stuff. And, and then I started learning the APIs. And it was a learning curve for sure.
Yeah.
But all of that said, bless MediaWiki for making the cloud service available,
making it possible. No, that was a good shout out you gave. And there have been no calls for help. So
that's right. That could be because people don't find the button.
Yeah, it could be. It's true.
No, but they could pop into the main session and find us.
Yeah. did you get a sense? I mean, I'll probably find this out when people are sharing, but were people more sort of working on their own records or looking at someone's screen, sort of
So
commenting on?
out of the 5 breakouts, 4 were looking at a shared screen, and the last one, they had been looking at a shared screen, but they had gotten to the point where they all wanted to try to do their own thing without sharing. So I entered, and they were all like very focused, and nobody was talking. So awesome. I mean, wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. Yep. Yeah, but I think it was really thoughtful of you to kind of identify those folks who could give a help,
and
get
I
started.
mean, I am so grateful to them for taking that on, because that's also a big ask, right? It's like, well, I don't know what you're going to be talking about.
I know. Yeah. It's I think it's friendly company though.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. Absolutely. And so did you get the sense that some people dropped off when it came time to join a breakout session?
I didn't notice it sort of happening all at once. It was definitely, I think it was more, yeah, probably, because I think it was still more than 40 when I looked, when we were starting to take questions. So between starting the question session and going to the breakout rooms, I think that's when folks dropped out.
Oh, I see Christine hopped off. She's not in any of the Christine DeBella.
Give another shout out for a couple minutes.
Yeah, thank you so much for emceeing, so to speak.
Oh, of course.
It's super helpful. I mean, this is wonderful.
Yeah, my pleasure. No, I'm really glad it's working out. And like I said, clearly you were getting a lot of nice appreciation just in the question answer, which goes to show that it's good we're doing the meeting.
It's filling a need.
Yeah.
Which that, like, I can't wish for more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll continue when folks come back. I'll keep monitoring the chat, but hopefully people will just be willing to share out some of what they were seeing. For my own sake, I hope.
I hope so too, and I do hope that people leave comments on the discussion.
Yeah, you should repeat it, I think.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to start trying to bring people back in, close the rooms. Okay. All right, I think everyone is back.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, I am so curious to hear what that experience was like, what you noticed, what questions you have. I may not be able to answer them, but we'll muddle through together.
I know in our instance, we were trying to add a beginning date in addition to the date statement there, but for whatever reason, when we tried to type in the number for the beginning date, it said no value found. So I'm just curious about that.
That one I can answer. Date in this Wikibase is implemented as an item. So you would have to create an item record for that date first, and then you can link it.
All right, so if it's like the year 1860, I would have to create an item of 1860 in order to have it be.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in my case, what I would love to have to try this at home would be like a filled out model of this with common associate common entities and associations and how they're rendered, because it's like I know what I mean, but expressing it in the system is the challenge right now. And yeah, like Beth said, something akin to a template. And again, it really helps to have the McGovern collection as something we can reverse engineer.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm taking notes. So, what I can do is fill out that record a little more so that it's a better model. The other template of sorts that is available is the cradle forms, but you still have to make a selection there, like which of those properties you want to use, right? And one thing that is different in RiC from what we're used to in EAD or in DAX for that matter, is that RiC doesn't have a concept of required. Like, it's up to you which statements you want to make about this thing. And so what's missing is maybe application, or not application, profiles, where we say, well, when describing a record set, at a minimum, you want to use these and these and these statements. But the RiC-CM doesn't give us that guidance. So we kind of have to make our own rules in a way. And so that's where, when you look at the cradle forms and there's like 20, 30 possibilities on there, that's where you kind of have to make some choices. And because we're all at the very beginning of this and we don't have like institutional practice or a best practices document, et cetera, it gets a little difficult to make those choices. And I'm really hoping that the application guidelines, which will be published next week, will help with that.
Yeah, because it's so it's so wide open and yet so granular.
Yeah, that's right. Jody.
You actually mostly answered my question already, but yeah, I mean, in the last 25 years of descriptive practices, the reason that we've gotten anywhere is because of having, here's a useful minimum. Here's what enables aggregation across institutions. So it will be really interesting to see those implementation guidelines, because if we all simply go back to baking our own bread locally, that would kind of be a big step backward. I'm sure that's not what they intended. So interesting times.
Yeah, and depending on what the application guidelines bring, this may also be an opportunity for, say, SAA to work out, maybe TS DAX, I'm looking at you folks, to say, hey, in DAX, we have this set defined as, minimum and optimum, and maybe we can develop the corresponding profile for RiC.
So I guess by saying that, does that indicate that EGAD is not interested in proposing like any kind of like a minimum or optimal?
At least that is the last I have heard. And I'm sure we'll find out more next week. But my last knowledge of this is that it was out of scope for EGAD. Yeah, Kelly.
Yeah, so our group is actually looking at that DAX to RiC crosswalk. And the challenges that we found in our group was, one, we would love to be able to search by the RiC number, like 823 or something like that, because we were trying to figure out if we were missing it, and when we tried to do that search, it didn't come up for us. The other thing that we bumped up against was, I think, a Wikibase issue of, we tried to add a scope and content note in our series, and it was too large for it. So.
Aha. I am making notes if I can find my pencil. Thank you. Do you remember what the character limit is on that?
Well, 400 words. Does that sound right, Deborah? Yeah. Yes. Someone else in my group is nodding. So yes, 400.
Yeah. And you may know this, but if you follow the turtles down, somewhere near the bottom in a Wikibase is actually just a MySQL database. And those tend to have character limits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kate.
So, Regina, in other workshops and conversations I've had with you, you did something really helpful. And that was to talk about how an ontology is similar, or how RiC anyway is similar or different from a content standard and an encoding standard. And I don't know if you have an elevator speech about that you have prepared, or I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize for maybe doing that, but it has been helpful to, as a traditional metadata creator who's used to a content standard and an encoding standard, to have you talk again about what this new world is for us.
Yeah, I don't know that I have an elevator speech for that. It is a little different. RiC is certainly not a content standard. So, it doesn't tell us how to formulate our dates, and it doesn't tell us where to look for pieces of information. And in that sense, I think there is still a place here for a content standard. Oh, Kerstin, do you want to answer that question? No, okay. Then I'll finish my not very structured thought. And at the same time, RiC-CM is certainly not a transmission standard because it's just sort of the conceptual model, right? Now, RiC-O, the ontology, that might act as a transmission standard because it is a structure. It does have a schema. And the question there just becomes, what do we do with all those very, very granular 500 plus properties? Because they all need to be mapped for the transmission to work, right? So there's a little bit of work ahead of us. But I would say in terms of a transmission standard, RiC-O could certainly serve as one. Kerstin.
Yeah, thank you. No, I didn't want to jump on this. I actually have another question, a more practical one with regard to the possibilities in Wikibase. And I will admit I haven't really used that as a platform so far, so I might just missing things. But so I'm from Europe. For those who don't know me, I'm working at Atlas Portal Europe, and I tried kind of using this with a non-English collection. And while it allowed me to kind of create the label in another language, it seems to currently require an English label for that to actually show up on the item page.
Interesting. So I'm going to speculate here, and I don't really know. I have to follow up on it, but I'm making note of it. That may be a configuration thing. And possibly a preset from the Wikibase cloud instance. I'm almost positive that in a local instance where you have full control over all the configuration options, that would not be a requirement. And you can just say, I want to require it in German, or I don't want to require it in any language. I just want to require it. But I'm going to follow up for this instance to see whether there's anything I can do about that. Thank you.
Because I think it also depends then, or it becomes important when you start linking items with each other, because that essentially mainly kind of comes up if you're using the English language term, but not, I mean, so I just tried it also with the German, so that appears kind of in brackets after the English term, but you have to know that this does, because otherwise you might not find the item that you want to link it to.
Got it. Thank you. And while you all are thinking of more things to comment on, I'm just going to plug one more time. Please don't leave without putting a comment on the discussion tab there for the benefit of us all and anyone else who comes after us. It's super helpful to get these perspectives and to hear these things that people struggled with. And that way we can also leave responses, and anyone else who struggles with the same thing can find the responses there and doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. And obviously this tool is there for all of you to use. Tell your friends about it. Basically, I am releasing it into the wild today. And let me know anything that needs fixing. That thing with the English label being required was not on my radar. I'm so grateful to know about that so that I can follow up on it. Anything else that you see, properties that may be missing, things that may be mapped wrong, just let me know and I'll continue to refine it.
Regina, this is just such a huge service to give us a sandbox to play in.
Exactly.
This
Yeah,
is,
to have that
this
access.
is one of the pieces of going from all the theory to implementation. And just to react to Kate, I think this is a very different way of thinking. I think my greatest hesitation, but we're going to put in a date. What kind of date should it be? That is a huge mental transition. So just being able to experiment, to experience those questions, this is just great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. You're making my day. That was exactly what I was hoping when I started tinkering with this. All right, if we don't have any more questions, I'm just going to say thank you again to Max and Bets, and to our drivers in the breakout sessions, to Anna and Kelly and Maristella and Maggie, who I think has left in the meantime. And wait, who am I missing?
Oh, I did it too.
Yes, Rachel, thank you. Sorry. Thank you for driving. I think that was very useful to folks who aren't as comfortable in a Wikibase. So I really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining. And again, just to echo what's already been said, thank you, Regina, for such a productive session and for the labor of love that went into, generating all the material for this. More to come.
Thank you so much. Yeah. All right.
Okay,
Have
bye,
fun all.
everyone.
Edit some more.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.